Alright, so let's talk a little bit about where we are on this brooder. It is still kind of cold outside, so we still have the heat lamp on, but at this point you're getting really close to what it might be outside if it was a warmer temperature outside. So you might be turning this on only at night and off during the day. If it's really hot and you need some ventilation, depending on how you have your chicks, you might be putting them outside. You might be opening a door, opening a window. Check on that temperature, don't get them overheated. So let's look at what our birds look like today. All right, so all of the birds might look a little different. They're gonna start getting their feathers in. This guy has tail feathers right here, and a bunch of really nice wing feathers, flight feathers. He's starting to get feathers up here on his neck, but his head is still really fluffy. And you'll notice that underneath he's got like a pink skin. You'll see it between his feathers and under his feathers. This is really bad. You'll see it under his feathers. He's still got a really pink skin. So the body feathers have not come in yet. They're not huge fans of being held, but most of their feathers are going to start coming in this week, and that's good because we're going to, at the end of this week, put them out at grass. So primary growth, you're going to get a little bit of body feathers, the rest of your flight feathers, some tail feathers, and they're just going to start looking more like a feathered chicken. So let's roll into the next day and talk about something else. So we're going to talk about food real quick while I do some of the other chores. When it comes to feeding your chicks, it's very, very important that you figure out what you want to feed your chicks. We feed an unmedicated custom blend that is ground at a local mill that we go to. I will leave a link in the description below that you guys can have access to that mixture, and you can figure out if it's something that you want to feed or not. It is a very high protein mix, similar to like a chick feed or starter feed, but we just feed that to them from day one until processing day or the day before processing day. It's got corn, it's got peanuts, it's got soy. So the best thing to do if you're gonna have it custom mixed is to call the mill that you're gonna get it from. You tell them your goals, tell them what you want, and then usually they'll work with you through the process to make a feed that works best for you. And you might have to experiment a little bit. If you're just doing one batch and that's all you really want to do, then I would recommend just going to the store and getting a grower feed or a chick starter feed, and then feeding them a grower feed after that. But that's it on feed. It's very simple. Call your mill, tell them what you want, do a little research beforehand. Like I said, I will leave a link to the feed that we use so that way you guys can see that. And then also, if you're only doing one batch, I would just buy the 50-pound bags. But make sure that you've got it under control and you're getting enough for your chicks. So we feed, as far as amount goes, we feed about 1/4 of a pound to 1/3 of a pound of feed per day per bird. So by the end of our time, if we were doing 50 birds, I think it's somewhere around 1,200 pounds, or a little bit more. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about feed. If you're on a budget, you don't want a lot or very expensive. You don't want a very expensive feed because it could get really expensive over the lifetime of the bird. So let's roll into the next day and talk about what we're going to do for bedding. All right, so let's talk about bedding for a minute. Bedding for your chickens should be pine shavings. Some other people use other things, wood chips, pine straw, or the chop straw. The problem with chop straw is it can attract mites or lice, and we don't want to do that with these chicks because that's just a problem. You don't want your chicks getting mites and lice. Wood chips, they're just not as absorbent as the pine shavings. They're really heavy. they don't perform as well as the pine shavings. Pine shavings are light, they are really absorbent, and they're really easy to clean once you get them out of your brooder, and they break down really well in your compost. So we use pine shavings. Let me show you the brand that we use. Alright, so this is the brand of pine shavings that I use. I didn't realize that I opened the bag on the bottom, but that should help you. They are Tractor Supply premium pine shavings, and they're probably about $4 or $5 a bag, and I usually use about 2 to 3 bags in the lifetime of the chicks in the brooder. And it's very important. It's very important to change this stuff. Keep that in mind. So $4 or $5, that's 20, 25 bucks, depending on, no, sorry, it's $10 or $15. $10 or $15 over 4 weeks. But if you're not changing, then you could have some respiratory issues from the ammonia over the whole life of the bird, and possibly lose money and not make it to the end. So keep that in mind as you change out these shavings. The more you change them, the less likely that you are to not have a problem, and that's better. It's better for you, better for the bird, better for your wallet, because you're not going to lose any. And so we're going to roll into the next day and talk about something else. Bye. All right, guys, new day and new question. So let's start with one of the questions that we get asked a lot, and that question is, do we use antibiotics? And the answer is no. We do not use any type of antibiotics. If the bird is looking kind of sickly, as a preventative maintenance measure, let's start there. As a preventative maintenance measure, we usually use apple cider vinegar in the water. Not too much, because it can give the chicken the runs, but we just start with that. If the chicken or the bird or the chick seems to be getting sick and the apple cider vinegar is not working, then we will separate the bird and quarantine it in the garage. And then we usually have a 5-gallon bucket of water with some garlic in it, and that acts as like a natural antibiotic. Beyond that, we just try and make sure the bird stays eating and is drinking. But if it doesn't, sometimes you lose a bird, and that's okay. It's better than trying to pump it with antibiotics. It get better, then it might get worse, or it might not get better at all. And so there's no point in us feeding our birds antibiotics, especially with what we're trying to do here on the homestead. So hopefully that answers that question. So today, super simple day. We're not doing anything exciting. We're not talking about anything exciting too much. We went ahead, checked the water, checked the feed. We gave them a little bit of kale in their food today.
The purple stuff is grit.
Yeah, and a little bit of grit, just because they got the kale. We don't give a lot of grit just because our food, our normal commercial food, is already ground up. But if we were feeding whole grains, we would give grit to the chicks as well. But that's it for today, guys. There is another question that we get, do we vaccinate for Merrick's? And if you don't know what Merrick's is basically like the herpes of chickens. But if you look behind me, there's a bunch of field back here that is the same as our field that we'll be running them in the front. And so what happens is a bird naturally may have Merrick's, comes down, lands in the field, eats grasshoppers, eats whatever, and then flies away. And so you have the opportunity of your chicken getting Merrick's from anything, from other chickens, from other animals, wild birds, So we do vaccinate for that. It is a little bit of a price added on to the chick, but the chicks get that before they're shipped out. So we do vaccinate for Merrick's, just to give us a little bit of a heads up. But other than that, that's all we do. So hopefully that answers that question as well. And we're gonna go into the next day. All right, guys, man, it is the end of week 3. And it feels like we just started yesterday. But I am so excited because today is very important, and that is
we are in the tractor, and I want to talk to you about a couple things that you need to start thinking about since it's the end of week 3. Some people put their birds out at the end of week 3. Some people wait till the end of week 4. We will probably put some of them, if not all of them, out at the end of, or in the middle of week 4. Yeah, at the middle of week 4, because 1, it'll be the weekend, and 2, it allows me to have a little bit more time to keep some eye on them as they're in here. Let's talk about chicken tractor design, and let's talk about some things to think about as you put your birds outside. So chicken tractor design, you want to make sure you have something like hardware cloth lining this section of your chicken tractor, because keep in mind that these birds are small. They're not, you know, full grown, and you don't want big netting. You want to be able to keep enemies or predators out, including arms and hands out of here. So you don't want chicken netting at the bottom, because it's a little too wide, and a raccoon can just slip its hand in there. Next thing you want to do is keep an eye on the weather. Think about when you want to put the chickens out. Don't give yourself like 2 or 3 days of good weather. If it's too wet, it's going to be a problem. If it's too windy, they're probably going to get scared from the tarp, and they're going to trample each other. If it's rainy and it's gross and not a lot of sun, just keep that in mind. Yeah, think about the weather that you would want to be put out in a tractor, and then think about your birds. Do they want to be put out in scalding hot temperatures? Probably not. Do they want to be put out in the rain, in the wet, in the wind? Probably not. So we're gonna do the best that we can. I think we've got some clear days coming up. I need to check it again, but we're gonna try this weekend, maybe put them out early, but that's what I'm thinking. And then get them outside, get them on that grass, because that is what makes the difference. Green grass makes a whole lot of difference. We're gonna actually run ours over at the other side of the yard, so I have to move this, but that is for week 4. So if you guys liked week 3, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell button for week 4 so you know when it's gonna drop. Share this with anybody who's looking to raise Freedom Rangers, and hopefully we can help them out and answer some questions. Hopefully this helped you guys out a lot, and I think I'm gonna end this video here. So until we see you next time, guys, have fun with whatever you're working on. Bye, guys.